Okay, my sound's on. Hi, Dr. Gregory. This is Laura Thomas. I am uploading a separate video because for my Module 8 PowerPoint and video assignment, I had recorded, I made my PowerPoint and did the recording in that, but when I check it in my uh, uh, in the test assignment, um, and tried to re-download that to make sure it was working right, I see the PowerPoint, but I just see a picture of me and it's not playing the video. So I just want to make sure that the video part's included so I don't lose any points. So I'm going to upload this separately just to let you know why there's two if in case that one does end up working. So again, this is Laura Thomas, and in this video I'm going to talk about two of the major things that I learned in TEEL 202 or Foundations of Education class that really changed the way that I see education. So when I signed up for this class, I thought I had a pretty basic understanding of what teachers do and how the schools work. But I quickly realized that there's this entire world that's really behind the scenes, that's been full of history, laws, political influences, and decisions that were made, in some cases, long before any of us were even born. And understanding why things are the way they are has honestly made me feel more confident about becoming a teacher because now I can see the bigger picture. I chose to focus on the common school era and special education inclusion because both of these shape so much of what we still see today in schools, and they have each changed my perspective in different ways. So, the first topic I'm going to discuss is the common school era or understanding the roots of our school system. So, that was the first topic that stuck with me was the common school era. Before this class, I didn't even know that this was a thing. I had never heard of Horace Mann or the huge reforms that happened in the 1800s, as this is really my first education class I'm taking. So I had no idea that public education in America had such an intentional design behind it. And some of the things I didn't know before about that, like I mentioned, I had never heard of Horace Mann before the class. And really learning that he was just one man and that he influenced our entire education system was honestly a little bit surprising. The fact that he himself was pushing for free tax funded education for everyone and that he believed that education could bring people together and create a shared American identity, those were huge. And it made me appreciate how different our country might actually be today if he hadn't been there to push for those changes. The second thing is I didn't realize how purposely structured everything was. I had always assumed, I guess, that schools probably evolved randomly or just naturally over time. But learning that things like grade levels, standardized curriculum, and even the length of the school day were intentionally designed blew my mind. It made me see that school culture, isn't accidental, it's been built. The third thing is I didn't know that teaching became a female dominated profession for financial reasons. I would say that one kind of shocked me. Women weren't hired because they are seen, maybe as more nurturing or naturally good teachers, but they were hired because they were cheaper. It's kind of strange to see how something that started as sexism actually shaped the profession, even still to this day. So the fourth thing is I didn't realize how controversial public schooling was at the start. So I guess I kind of used to think that debates about public schools are probably more of a modern issue. But no, I've learned that parents were arguing about curriculum control and what values should be taught even in the 1800s. It made me realize that education has always been political because it deals directly with the children and community identity. And then the fifth thing is I didn't realize how much of today's system is still built on the 1800s ideas. So it's interesting that so many of the things we accept today, like having a unified curriculum, having trained teachers, and expectations for professionalism, were created during this era. I didn't know how old these ideas actually were. And then why this topic matters to me. So this topic made me realize that when I become a teacher, I would be stepping into a system that was created with long-term goals in mind. It helped me understand that why schools do things the way that they do it. And it showed me that even though teaching, it sometimes may feel frustrating or can be slow to change, there's a reason behind those structures. It also made me think more critically about how much influence teachers actually have. Even though the system was built long ago, we're still shaping it today just by how we teach, how we treat students, and how we interact with families. That bigger sense of purpose is something that I would say I didn't have before this class. And then the second topic that I'm going to discuss is on special education inclusion or a shift toward belonging. So the second topic that really affected me was special education inclusion. I came into this class with, I would say, just some very surface level understanding, mostly from hearing about IEPs from people that have them, or from people that have kids that have them, or seeing inclusion in classrooms, when I was a kid myself in school. But I didn't know the history behind it or how much work and legal advocacy had to go into getting us where we are today with that. So some of the things that shocked me the most learning about that is, first of all, I didn't know how recent it was that students with disabilities were even allowed in public schools. That part honestly was a little emotional and very sad. When I learned that students with disabilities weren't guaranteed access to public education until like the mid 1970s, I had to take a moment to process that. So I'm in my 40s. My mom graduated from high school in 1976. So it's crazy to think that that was during her childhood when she was in school that students with disabilities were just starting to enter public schools. That means that my mom grew up in a world where many of the kids didn't even have the right to have an education if they had a disability. And I had always imagined this change happened, I guess, way earlier, like maybe in my grandparents' childhood or something. But learning it was during my mom's generation made it feel a lot more real and recent. And the second thing is, I didn't know the idea came from parents literally fighting the system. I learned during this course that parents had to take schools to court just to get their children an education. I never realized how hard these families had to fight for rights that now seem, so obvious to most of us. And then the third thing that I didn't realize is how many layers of legal protection students have today. So before this class, the acronyms like IDEA, FAPE, LRE, and IEP, I would say didn't mean much to me. Now I understand that they are very serious. As a teacher, we are legally responsible for making sure that students get what they need. And I didn't know how big that responsibility was, I would say. The fourth thing is I didn't understand what real inclusion looks like. Inclusion isn't just placing a student in a classroom, but it's making sure that they're actually learning, feeling supported, and being part of the community. That difference really shifted my thinking. The fifth thing is I didn't know how deeply inclusion is tied to dignity and belonging. This course made me see that it's not just an educational issue, but rather it's a human issue. These students just want to feel accepted and valued just like anyone else does. And then the sixth thing that I didn't realize is I didn't know how much collaboration inclusion requires. So I guess I used to picture teaching as something that, mostly teachers do alone. But now I see that for special education at least, there's a lot of teamwork involved. There's SPED teachers, paraprofessionals, counselors, psychologists, and families, and they all work together for their education. And why that matters to me is this topic made me think about the kind of teacher I want to be. Inclusion isn't just following a law, but it's making sure that students feel safe, supported, and capable. It's treating them with dignity and believing in their potential. And knowing how recent this progress is makes me feel even more responsible to keep moving forward and to advocate for every student. And then the second part of the assignment of why things are the way they are today. So now I just want to connect this history to four things that we see in schools today and explain why they exist. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is standardized testing. So testing is everywhere now, but learning about the Common School era helped me understand that this focus on standardization didn't come out of nowhere. And then more recent policies like No Child Left Behind push testing to a whole new level. Knowing that history helps me see testing as something to use carefully, but not something that should define students. And then the second thing is inclusion practices. So everything we do for students with disabilities today is because of the acts that were made for students with disabilities, the IDEA, FAPE, LRE, and decades of advocacy. Knowing that history behind these rights helps me take my future responsibility seriously. The third thing is teacher licensure requirements. So I guess I used to think that licensure was mostly just paperwork. Now I know it's actually rooted in early efforts to professionalize teaching, and understanding that history makes me value that process more. And the fourth thing is on school board decision making. School boards make huge decisions that affect classrooms, and now I understand how that connects back to federalism and local control. That will help me navigate school politics as a teacher better. So for my closing statement, this course has really opened my eyes to the bigger picture of education. Learning about the Common School era helped me understand where our system came from, And learning about special education inclusion helped me understand how far we have come and how important it is to keep fighting for equity. So, as future teachers, we're stepping into a profession that's been shaped by history, law, community, and human stories. Knowing why things are the way that they are will help me to teach with purpose and compassion. And it reminds me that the work we do matters not just for today, but for future generations as well. So thank you so much for listening. Also, Dr. Gregory, I just wanted to add that I've really enjoyed this course and learned a lot from it. And I think you were a great professor, and I really enjoyed all the feedback you gave from us. So thank you so much for being a wonderful professor, and I hope to maybe have some more education classes with you in the future. Have a great day.